I don't know what it is, but something inside me tells me that Kobold Press is getting ready to show off more and more of Tales of the Valiant in its final form. Well, it could also be the rapid fire of articles they're posting on their website, but I choose to believe that I have the gift of foresight. So without further ado, let's look into some of the new stuff. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game masters, my name is Mr. Tarask, and today I want to talk a little bit more about Tales of the Valiant, and I want to talk about two things, mainly two articles posted on the Kobold Press website pretty recently. Yesterday they shared an article about the new Mimic coming to Tales of the Valiant. They shared the stat block, the artwork, all of that stuff, and a little bit of like the thinking behind the design of the Mimic. Now the Mimic isn't necessarily entirely different than the 5th edition counterpart, but it's pretty interesting. It has like one or two pretty interesting things going for it. Then they also posted an article with some of the things they changed, like in general things they changed from the playtesting material we playtested a while ago to like now almost the final release of Tales of the Valiant. So without further ado, let's get into it. And the first thing that I want to talk about is this article right here, Tales of the Valiant Tuesday, what changed in the final book after your playtest comments. Now an article like this really gives me that that confidence I've always had in Kobold Press, where they just like they listen to their community, they ask the right questions, they do questionnaires. When a big group of people want something done in a particular way, they will go out of their way to at least research if they can do that in a particular way and make it make sense for their game, and then slap a Kobold Press coat of paint over everything, if you know what I mean. Also, the closer we get to release, the more I realize this is just 5th edition, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Something being 5th edition isn't bad. 5th edition is a great system, and I think Kobold Press is doing a really good job in creating their own game out of 5th edition. For me, I always compare it to, like, I don't know, the Unreal Engine, right? The engine is where you make the game from, and Dungeons and Dragons for me is the game created in the 5th edition with the 5th edition engine. Yes, the 5th edition engine is created for Dungeons and Dragons, but the game Dungeons and Dragons, the art, the looks, the writing, the way they say things, the way they design stuff is created with the 5th edition rules, and Tales of the Valiant is just doing the same thing, but they're going in a somewhat other direction here and there. So there are a few like general vague things in here, but there is just like one or two things that I want to just to kind of like talk about, right? So first of all, what got better? Adventure gears, tools, vehicles, light invisibility. Well, I do not know why it got better because they don't say it right here. Tracking and hiding, downtime rules, and magic item pricing. Those two are peculiar. I have yet to encounter a game that really does downtime rules well. I've seen, like, really well. I've seen some that do downtime rules pretty good. Wizards of the Coast has some good stuff in their downtime rules, but generally it just doesn't make sense. A lot of it doesn't make sense. Other games have some good, simple downtime stuff going on, and I'm really curious about Tales of the Valiant having downtime rules and what they're going to do with that exactly, because yeah, I'm really curious about that, because I'm always on the lookout for having my players do things during downtime, but because most of the time it's just like 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later in the world, right? And there's just like nothing happened. They just, I don't know, went drinking, and I don't know. So yeah, downtime rules for learning a new language, for learning a new skill, for learning, I don't know, getting proficiency in a skill or whatever. Really important stuff for me. Magic item pricing, what I want to say about that is I always feel really bad for the person who has to price items in a fantasy game. First of all, every world is different, and Tales of the Valiant, although Kobold Press has the Midgard campaign setting, and a lot of it will be intentionally or unintentionally designed towards the Kobold Press Midgard campaign setting. A lot of people will be playing Tales of the Valiant in a different campaign setting. At least that's what I think. And pricing magic items for me, ever since I played D&D, whatever tabletop RPG, like 3rd edition, I don't know, I've always found it to be completely it's stupid in a way to price items in a book, because every world is different. I mean, especially magic items, right? A staff of walk a bit faster might be priced 1 gold piece in a high magic setting. It might be priced 1,000,000 gold pieces in a low magic setting, right? Just to walk a bit faster. So yeah, that's just something that I don't know why they say some base rules elements got a major glow ups. What got better? Major glow ups. Magic item pricing. Don't know what they mean by that. But spell circles and spell rings. Now, this was something that I, at the beginning, had a real problem with. The earliest public playtests for Tales of the Valiant didn't show off all the planned changes we had for spells. Private testing, however, was a different story. Every SRD spell brought into Tales of the Valiant got attention, and we added a bunch of brand new spells to round out each source list. Speaking of which, after many votes and much discussion, we landed on following new terms in the final version. In the early playtest, spell levels were renamed spell rings, but over the course of playtesting, the final term is now spell circles. So in the early playtesting, they had rings, they had circles, they had, I don't know, circles, squares, triangles. All of that just didn't make any sense to me. It was a lot of gibberish, and the intention was there, absolutely, but it just didn't make sense to me. Use either rings or either circles. I don't care if you use rings. I don't care if you use circles. I don't care if you use freaking hexagons. Just use one thing because I cannot handle like 2 things, right? In the early playtests, class spell lists were renamed and reflavored into spell circles. Yeah, here it is. So the spell levels were the rings and the lists were circles. So we had rings and circles. We had circles and rings. So somehow we were supposed to know which one was which and not find that confusing. It was freaking confusing, and they fixed it. I love that they fixed it. While the design of this 4 list hasn't changed from playtesting, the final term is now spell source. This is good because every spellcasting class chooses its spells from the arcane, divine, primordial, or weird source. I love this. This is the stuff that I love. This is what I want from Tales of the Valiant. I've always hated in 5th edition, I always hated like that for every spellcasting class, even if it was like a half casting class, that's like the paladin or the ranger or whatever, they got their own list, and a lot of it was just like cross contamination with spells and stuff, and they all had their own list, and it took up like a bunch of pages, and you had to like look through the list if it was for your class, and it's just, man, I hated it. And spell source just make more sense because now we have arcane, divine, primordial, or weird, and you just say like, oh, you're a wizard, you pick from the arcane list. Oh, you're a cleric, you pick from the design list. Simple as that. Oh, you're a cleric that has, I don't know, oh, what happened? It jumped because it was, so you're a cleric who has an ability where you study arcane books. Okay, you can pick one spell from the arcane spell list. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but that's the idea behind it, right? That's the design choice behind it, and that's how you simplify a system in a way, but also make it make sense in a world. And in a world, this makes much more sense than tying spells to one class. Tying your spell to the source makes much more sense. Then they go on about, like, I don't want to go too deep into this, all that stuff, refining, rebalancing character options. They gave a huge portion of playtesting was dedicated to character options, base classes, subclasses, and spells, most complicated game design. Somewhere it says here that they wanted, that a lot of people wanted martial classes to be more powerful. If I would redesign D&D 5th edition, I wouldn't do that. I would make spellcasting classes just a little bit more toned down, right? Because I like that more toned down. I'm not like a high hero kind of Legolas type of dude. I'm more like the boots on the ground type of dude, like that kind of like mid magic, if that makes any sense. But Tales of the Valiant is going completely, utterly batshit crazy on martial classes, which is good for people who like martial classes. I like martial classes. The fighter is my favorite class, so Yeah, that's cool. They go into like what they changed for different classes. Not really important to me, but one thing that I want to talk about really quickly is the martial talent list is now twice the size of the magic or technical talent list, and every single talent option is great. We wanted them all to feel as juicy as 5E's Sentinel or Polearm Master feats. This is something I can agree with. You all made it clear that empowering martial classes was a top priority. So for me, martial classes didn't need to per se become more powerful, but I like that they're getting more options in the form of feats. Well, they call it talents, and weapon feats and stuff like that are technical talents. Martial talents. So they have the martial talents, martial feats, magic feats, and technical feats. And the martial feats, there's now more martial feats. And I, for one, really like building fighters with, like, I don't know, a feat that makes them, like the pole arm feat, for example, is a great feat. The crossbow expert feat, the sharpshooter feat, although I don't really like the design, I like the idea behind it. Yeah, I like those options. So with this article, I'm actually pretty convinced I want to at least run this game for at least a few sessions, and hopefully for a lot, and maybe even for a actual play on my channel when it comes out. If it ever comes out. And then there's this guy, Monster Vault Preview Tales of the Valiant presents The Mimic, with this great artwork of a barrel mimic, a mundane barrel, but if you try to touch it or you come close, it tries to eat you or grab you, or a combination of both. It is a really cool artwork. I really like this one with all of these eyes here going on. So yeah, really cool artwork. And they have this article about like how they are approaching the monsters for Tales of the Valiant. And then they have the stat block, basically. A hateful crimson eye opens on the surface of an otherwise innocent nauseous barrel. Then another eye opens, and another still. With startling speed, the barrel becomes a pseudopod wielding horror, its toothy mouth opening wide. Wow. Nobody will ever. This sentence probably has never existed in the multiverse ever, but it's a great sentence. So, shape-shifting ambusher, deceptive hunters. So, what is different about this from the 5th edition stat block? Now, we are comparing a CR2 creature to a CR2 creature, the Mimic from 5th edition, meaning that there isn't a whole lot to change. This is not like an Elder Dragon, which has like 3 pages of stat block figure of speech, of course, but there's much more to change there. Now, there is a few things about this that immediately becomes clear, and that is that just the stat block, the way it reads is different. It's different because the Mimic and the CR is up top. Just a stupid little thing that helps a game master out a lot. In the original stat blocks, it's you always have to like go here for its challenge. No, now it's just like next to the title, right? Medium monstrosity, changer, armor class the same, hit points the same, speech is a little bit faster, speed 15 feet, speed 20 feet, and then you get a number, perception, and stealth. Here they give you senses, dark vision, passive perception, 11. The stealth they give you a +5 on stealth. So with this, it having 13 stealth, when you roll a perception check in order to spot this thing, you just need to beat this number, which streamlines your game. I think that's the way you do it, but that's the way I think you do it, so that's the way I'm gonna do it until somebody corrects me, but that streamlines the game, right? Instead of contesting, like, roll me a perception check, and then you roll a perception check with, like, this number as a game master, like +5, and then they're like, I rolled an 18, and you look down, and you're like, I just rolled a 15. That doesn't really, that's not streamlined. I've always kind of hated that. I've always made my players just roll against a passive number that I just come up with. It's vulnerable to cold damage. Let's see. Damage, immunities, acids. Vulnerable? Does it have vulnerability? It doesn't have vulnerabilities. Vulnerable to cold damage, resistant grappling, immune to acid and prone, keen senses to 60 feet. Another thing they do is they just name the small number. instead of being like this 17 plus 3, 12 plus 1, 15 plus 2, all of that stuff. They just name the small number, which are basically exactly the same as the 5th edition monster. And other than that, this is almost entirely the same monster, with the main difference being something that I really, really, really like, and that is chain shape. No, it's not chain shape. It's prey shield. Prey shield. Prey shield. When a creature... So, you know that a mimic can basically grab people and then grapple them, and the people are then stuck on the mimic, and the mimic can like try to gnaw their way, like eat the character while they're holding it with like one of their tentacles. That's what a mimic does, basically. It has like this adhesive feature where a mimic adheres to anything that it touches, so it becomes stuck. It's basically glue, right? The prey shield, when a creature the mimic can see hits it with an attack while it is grappling a creature, so while it is holding a creature, the mimic can roll the grappled creature in front of the blow, forcing the grappled creature to take the damage instead. So you're a fighter, and the mimic grabs your wizard friend, and your wizard friend's like, I'm grappled by a mimic, help me! And you're like, I attacked the mimic because I want to help my friend. You attack the mimic, but then if that hit lands, the mimic can, as a reaction, it doesn't have to, but as a reaction, it can put that wizard in front of it, between you and itself, in order for you to strike that wizard instead of the mimic. I love that. It's a simple addition, but I absolutely love it. This is gonna make people focus on getting their friends out of the situation before they attack the mimic. Once you strike, you're a fighter and you decide to strike the mimic, and then you notice that you just dealt, I don't know, 3d8 plus 5 damage to your wizard friend. You're going to want to get your wizard friend out of there, and you're going to have to make strength contested rolls and all of that stuff in order to pull your friend out of the mimic's tentacles. Yeah, I like that. I like the Prey Shield edition. It's a small thing, but it will completely, like, it's one small, God damn it, one small addition to an otherwise almost the same creature, but it's gonna change combat entirely, and it really, 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 really screams Kobold Press. And that's it for now for Tales of the Valiant, but Kobold Press has been rapid-firing articles about the game, about the system on their website for a few weeks now, so my bet is there's much, much more coming, much more insight and sneak peeks into the system, so I will be having a look at those. I will be keeping a close eye on those, and until next video, bye-bye.